I am your host, Dr. Ken Richmond, board certified psychiatrist, veteran, and corporate leadership coach. I help corporate leaders pinpoint leadership issues so we can develop thriving workplaces with less turnover, improve workplace morale, and increase organizational performance. Today, folks, I have with us my guest strategist that I want to introduce to you guys. You guys ready? You want to know a little bit about him? All right, so this is Professor Robert M. Yawson. He's a leadership consultant, a thought leader in human resource development with over 90 publications on the market, folks. He's a researcher, an international author and speaker. He's a member of the board of directors of the Academy of Human Resource Development, a member of the board of governors of the Eastern Academy of Management, and overall, he's an invaluable resource to his students, like myself, the past and the present. So please welcome Professor Yawson to TBD Thursday with Dr. Ken. Hey, Dr. Yawson, how are you feeling?
I'm good, Ken.
Hey, well, I appreciate you being able to make today's broadcast. I know it is a holiday. Folks are celebrating Thanksgiving in some modified fashion, hopefully, and staying safe nonetheless.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, one of the things we do on TBD Thursday is that we use it as a way of refreshing, refining, and refocusing a strategy that was introduced a few days ago, specifically on Strategy Sunday. That's one of my other broadcasts that I do. And I introduced the Y word, yearning. So that's what we want to talk about today. What gets us interested and curious to do more, serve more. And we're going to use you as that exemplary example of what that is like. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right, so let me check in to see who's signed in here. So we have, so Susan is here. Thank you, Susan, for joining. And folks will just, they'll come in throughout the broadcast, and we'll just acknowledge them as they show up. All right. Okay. So let's see here. So I know you as my professor when I took my organizational leadership course, and I took a couple of your courses to the degree that I came up with a term called the Yawson Standard, right? And I shared that with you what that meant because when we would do our assignments, I would tell my classmates, if it doesn't meet the Yawson Standard, it is not going to get a good good grade. So that stuck with me. I applied it to a lot of the things that I've done as well, to the time that I did my master's program up there. But now my audience, when they see you as a successful consultant on leadership, on organizational and human resource development issues. But knowing that you didn't start there, tell us a little bit about how you got started, a little bit about your early beginning.
Well, I should say I was born in one of the historic towns along the Atlantic coast of Ghana. I'm the source of 9 children, 7 boys, 2 girls. So you can imagine the chaos in my house. So growing up in Ghana was fun. Being part of a large family, a larger extended family, created that perfect social, psychological, and religious safety. My parents never worried when we were gone playing outside in the neighborhood or in the fields. Sadly, something I cannot say for my kids now. My dad was a teacher, a farmer, and almost everything we ate at our home came from our own farm. I was trained as a biochemist. I have undergraduate and graduate degrees in biochemistry. I work as a biochemist at the Food Research Institute and ISO 1725 accredited government lab. Things changed when I was one day just asked to act temporarily as the head of admin for the Food Research Institute when the substantive HR retired and there was no one to replace him. So that's when my foray into organizational leadership actually started.
Well, excellent. Thank you for that intro. I mean, you already kind of getting the conversation going. Growing up in Ghana, what was it like? Like, tell us about the weather. Tell us about, the people. What was that like?
Yeah, Ghanaians are the most friendly people you'll meet. It's like everybody is each other's keeper. The weather is like summer in New England throughout the year.
Hmm.
There's no winters, nothing like that. So you can imagine me moving from Ghana to Minnesota, and how the change of weather was like for me with my 7 years of being there. But Ghana is one of the most stable democratic countries in Africa, and there's a lot to learn, a lot of history, a lot of connection, especially with the slave trade and all the others. So it's a nice place to be. So if you have holiday, Ghana is a place to go.
All right. Well, you have one of the audience members saying, Amber. She says, Ghana, love it there. So you have a fan already.
I see.
So growing up, did you have anything that occurred in your life that caused you to desire more for yourself, or was more put on you from others to do well? How did that play out for you?
Yeah, there's something in me that yearns for the better version of myself every day I wake up. And I've had the good fortune of traveling widely around the world. I've seen the beauty and the ugliness of the world. But as I have come to see, the beauty of the world surpasses its ugliness. One occurrence that changed a lot for me. I remember on one Wednesday morning, February 14th, 2001, it was a Valentine's Day in Israel. Just about 10 minutes after leaving a bus stop with a couple of friends, other international students, a bus driven by a terrorist plowed into a group of IDF soldiers and civilians at a very bus stop near the city Holon, that's south of Tel Aviv. And it was just less than 10 minutes after we've left there. And reflecting on that, I could have been among the several people that were killed that day. I was then visiting as a scholar at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, at the time being exposed to all the spectacular things that are being done in food biochemistry, the latest advances, etc. But that particular incident changed a lot, in fact, everything for me. Something in me started yearning for something different. While the world needs all the advances in the sciences, engineering, medicine, without which, of course, we will not survive as Homo sapiens. Those are not what will heal the world. It is leadership. And when I talk about leadership, I'm not necessarily talking about political leadership or even corporate or organizational leadership. Self-awareness can dramatically influence understanding of our loyalties, triggers, and purpose in relation to others and the general organizational culture. Our ability to rise above the personal snags to inspire and thrive within an environment creates an unwavering leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, what we yearn for, strive for, eager to, desire, seek, beg. When you talked about the Y word, I started looking at the other synonyms, like what do we strive for, what we desire, what we seek, demand. The story we tell ourselves becomes our reality. We are responsible for who we become as leaders. Being able to reflect on things we yearn for, our own actions and behaviors, as well as those of our organization, create a growth mindset within the organization and within ourselves. To continue to raise the bar, reflecting on what we yearn for is important, along with those internal motivations we as leaders create our future. The possibilities are endless, and with a mindset of growth and inclusivity. So that's what created that yearning in me, not just all the fancy stuff I was looking and I was into, but that particular occurrence changed a lot for me.
Well, Professor Yawson, I appreciate you giving us that background, because you also help to emphasize, how yearning to be more, to do more, to serve more, to just really take ourselves to another level. That for you started at a very, young time in your professional life, professional career, but it's carried you through to where you are now. I mean, you're here on a broadcast with one of your students from a few years ago. What what is that like to see? Hey, some of your lessons that you taught are now actually being manifested in a different way, but nonetheless, it's out there. You always encourage us to be leaders. So here's me doing what I imagine as a leader, my leadership style to be, and what I can contribute to the market.
Yes, it's interesting, and it's I'm proud of what all of you are doing, and that's what keeps you going. One, as a professor, and also as a thought leader. My interest in leadership did not start as an accident. I mean, it evolved from the experiences I've shared earlier, being appointed to act as head of administration HR with no background in that. My experiences I just shared. But in a PhD in organizational leadership was more of an accident. And it has turned out to be the best accident ever. My beautiful wife, Ivy, came to the University of Minnesota for her graduate degree, and I happened to visit. And I just chanced on the MS in Science, Technology, and Environmental Policy, and ultimately the PhD in Organizational Leadership. So when I went back to Ghana, I decided to come and pursue those degrees. So that's what formally brought me into organizational leadership as a scholar. But my experiences, if you allow me to paraphrase Thomas Jefferson, has surprised me of a past and a present, enabling me to judge the future. And as I reflect on the past, I see my persevering nature and the yearning to be a better version of myself every day. And the important thing is, as we all strive for a just and peaceful world, we talk about diversity and inclusion, we should understand that individuals often interpret matters through the lens of their life experiences, culture, religion, what they yearn for, and other personal characteristics. It was a perception that is very different from that held by others. What you've gone through, Ken, where you've been, Japan and others, it all influences your thinking, how you perceive things. And this is critical to just not ethically managing diversity, but being an ethical leader. I actually believe in transdisciplinarity, and leadership studies offers me just what I need. And that's what I love about leadership. And that's what I see in most of the people I've interacted with, especially being a professor.
Yeah. And I like to see the passion, when you talk about leadership topics. And, we always want to emphasize the fact that when it comes to leadership, we also have to know the language. How do you connect with somebody who, you're talking about something that's usually something that's very sensitive, in other words, if I believe my leadership style is 100%, flawless, then I don't have any room for improvement. I don't have any room to take in any kind of feedback. But if we understand leadership as being something that's fluid, right, I think that takes on a different meaning. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly. Like I'm saying, experiences, like what people bring in, you should see and identify with people through the lenses of their life, their experiences, their culture, their religion, what they yearn for, that what is in them. So if you are coming with a style that this is my style, this is my leadership style, and this is what people should follow, This is the fellowship I'm developing, and I expect everybody to do that. Wouldn't work. It should be leadership is a dialogue. It's what you see. It's what is in people and what you are able to bring out and let people thrive, even if you are not around. So it's that important. You cannot come from a single perception and think that that's the style and that is what it should be.
Yeah, and I appreciate you kind of highlighting that point again. I want to take a step back though, just a few minutes back, where you mentioned that you stumbled into organizational leadership as an accident. And sometimes when folks hear the word accident, they think something bad has happened. So when you phrase that term accident, tell me a little bit more. Can you say a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah. So when you talk of accidents, like maybe speaking in terms of what you are not expecting to occur, but it's nonetheless occurred, counterfactuals. When I was visiting my wife at the University of Minnesota, I had no plan of enrolling in a PhD program or a master's in policy program, although I've been thrust into leadership activities because of the experiences I've gone through and where I was working. But then it just happened that as international students, we're trying to find a place. We got lost moving. Then we entered a place, the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Then I saw the Master of Science in Leadership. Then other brochures, PhD in Organizational Leadership. That's it. Wow, I think this is something for me. What I'm doing, this will add value to my scholarship. I was practicing without any scholarly background because that's not what I was trained in. But when I chanced into that situation, it changed my whole direction of life. I wasn't going to be a professor of leadership until by that point in time, that accident where it wasn't planned, we're just going somewhere and we entered that place. So, and that's what it is about life and leadership in general. You cannot plan it, and maybe we'll talk about wiki problems later. But issues you don't plan for, they happen, and when they happen as a leader, and it aligns with what you are already yearning for, then things really align. So when I talk about accident, it was an accident of life, and it was a beautiful accident.
Well, it sounds like a beautiful one indeed, because you mentioned your wife. So I think I just wanted to make sure we highlighted that aspect of that accident, as you called it. That was my little slick way of getting you to really get into that a little bit more, because it sounds like a very pivotal time in your life as well.
Yes.
And you were following your passion, your passion, and your yearning for again, like I said, serving more and doing more, and actually constantly elevating and improving yourself. You didn't stay stuck at any level. You continuously strive for that level of excellence that you've achieved.
Exactly.
So one of the things I know when it comes to even as a junior employee in various organizations that I've been with and my military time, there are certain inherent complexities and frustrations that leaders deal with and encounter. And there is no way to say you are prepared 100% for every situation that will come across your desk or every situation that could be presented to you. Yes. Looking back, and we're going to do a comparison here. When you look back in the past 5 years, what have organizations yearned for? This is in hindsight now. What have they yearned for?
I think proper employee engagement. For the past 5 years, or even I should say 10 years,
okay.
If you look at it, how do we get employees engaged in what they do? And there's been different aspects, different approaches, but most organizations see the human capital, the human as assets where they can really ride on to get that performance they need. And if you want that, is employee engagement. So there has been several employee engagement, several workshop training and development, all trying to get employee to be engaged. That has been I should say the past 5 to 10 years. That's what organizations were focused on, with all other aspects of it. But the main thing was employee engagement.
That's huge. That's huge. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, and I said that's huge because when we talk about the discussions about burnout, compassion fatigue, usually those two things are not the same. But those elements in the workplace, how are we managing that? If we haven't managed it in the past, how are we managing it now, especially now?
Exactly. And if I should add, that is what at times the disengagement, what we leave out at home, the 40% of ourselves that we leave at home, we don't take into the corporate world. That's where the yearning is, the things we yearn for. So if an organization is to achieve what they want to achieve, they should be able to bring that into the organization. How do you engage the employee so as to understand what the employee actually yearns for? And it then helps the organization to achieve what the organization itself yearns for. So employee engagement, what they wanted is huge, but as to whether it was achieved is another question.
Yes, it is another question. And, in my brief discussions with some HR professionals, they mentioned that their roles have changed, or at least there's some blending of their responsibilities in the sense that they're now counselors and confidants to some degree, mentors in other areas. And in addition to do their HR primary responsibilities. So I think everything is just evolving. We look in the past 5 years. So how do we engage more? People obviously want you to listen to them more. Sounds basic, isn't it? So now, you have over 90 publications out. So, it was hard to not, encounter one of these articles when you type in your name. Okay. And in one of your earlier articles, we're going to look at one from March 2019, where you said, or it was mentioned that by 2020, millennials will account for 50% of the workforce.
Yes, I think so. And that's the challenge for organizations. One, leading a multi-generational workforce. But the majority will be the millennial workforce. They came into the workplace with different experiences. They were born into different circumstances than the previous one, how they engage. Everything so very different from baby boomers, Generation Z, etc. So how do you manage this multi-generations if we are trying to engage the workforce? If we talk about flexible workforce, flexible organizations, how do these different generations fit in? So that's a big one for HR leaders. And I still think, I haven't checked the statistics now, but I believe strongly that yes, we have about 50% of the workforce being millennials.
Yeah. So based on that, what are some of your predictions for organizations? What are they going to be yearning for over the next 5 years or greater?
Flexible workforce.
Flexible workforce. Work from home, remote work, virtual environment. So goodness, we are already there.
Lying on my bed with my PC or laptop working, and nobody, being in my pajamas working, and not being in a suit and a tie like I'm sitting here. Those flexible workforce, and of course that's just one aspect of it. But people who come in with very different perspectives, people who really want to see diversity, people who really want to be inclusive, but they don't want to be tied down to the restrictions of organizations as it were before. That rules, straight rules and others may not work for them. So it's flexible organizations, flexible workforce.
And flexible leadership.
Obviously, flexible
Yes,
leadership,
absolutely.
adaptive leadership.
Adaptive. Speaking of which, adaptive leadership, because you mentioned, we had one of your, was it a capstone? I don't know. It's like a blur right now. But we did have to do a paper for you. I had to do a paper for you on adaptive leadership, and I enjoyed doing that exercise or that capstone project because it reinforced a lot of what we talked about in the semester, but it also brought up that point of being deliberate with leadership, or recognizing instances where you can be deliberate with what you're doing.
Yes.
You now have, I don't know if it's a concept or framework, but it's called the wicked problem construct.
Yes.
These are fancy terms. So for those of us who don't know, we understand what wicked, we understand what each word by itself means, but as a sentence strung together, what is wicked problem construct? What is that?
In fact, if you should Google the said term wicked problems now, it will reveal about 50 million results in under a minute. Mm-hmm. Of course, depending on your computer speed. But then it's a term and a framework that has been adopted and used by scholars, policymakers, urban and social designers worldwide since the 1960s. What makes a problem wickedly difficult is what now other people use the term VUCA, V-U-C-A, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And wicked problems are difficult to understand and are often a symptom of another problem with interrelated issues. You pull one thread and many others may unravel. So a bit of history. In 1973, Rittel and Weber came out with their landmark article. The basis of wicked problems. They call it the dilemmas in the general theory of planning. In reflection of the complexity of the times they were in, one of the most volatile periods of US history, there was racial violence unleashed by the death of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, massive student protests over the Vietnam War, the war on poverty, publicly calling out the dichotomy of wealth and extreme poverty in America, environmental and public health crisis over the use of cancer-causing pesticides, the 1973 oil crisis. And so Rittel and Weber used the term wicked problems to name the social conditions of our time. And if I put out the date and just change and put some names there, you will think I'm describing the conditions we are in now. So wicked problems is as important as it was in 1973, when it was actually formulated, as it is now, to understand the complexity, the volatility, and the ambiguity of the times we are living in.
That is so powerful because, sometimes we think, we're introducing something new, and it's really just highlighting something that maybe from years ago that just hasn't been addressed. So it really just comes back in its cycle where, it's now on the forefront. It's now an action item. It's no longer deferred, right?
Exactly.
It's no longer to be determined.
Yes.
Well, folks, we have been listening to a broadcast of TBD Thursday with Dr. Ken. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Richmond. I'm here with my guest strategist, Professor Robert M. Yawson, PhD, as we're talking about the Y word, yearning. So, Professor Yawson, as we're transitioning to the wrap-up sequence here, I'm impressed by your ability to one, remain passionate, but I also identified a thread of interest in your ability to serve the impoverished. You mentioned, poor and obviously food supply and those kind of things. And I'm sure with your your education in biochemistry. You also did biotechnology, I believe.
Yeah.
In your career. But would you mind if I put you on the spot real quick?
Yes, please do.
Please do. Well, no one's ever asked to be put on the spot, and then they say, please, give me more. So here's what I'm going to say. Right. So I see that you have a new book out.
Yes.
Right. You have a new book out. It's called Navigating Big Finance and Big Tech for Global Change, the Impact of Social Finance on the World's Poor. So putting you on the spot, can you tell us a little bit more or some of the highlights of your recent publication?
Yes. I call the book the work of passion. The book was written to help new social investors do good, avoid harm, and never have to resort to the refrain, if I had known. So we paid particular attention to the potential of money and technology to improve the current and future lives of vulnerable people. There are a lot of things going on. Corporations and philanthropists, etc., are going into social financing with the aim of making profit and also doing good. But at the same time, it provides some common perils, the things that can go wrong and how to avoid them. So that's how we wrote the book with my colleague, Gil Peterson, a professor at Oxford University, looking at how big technology and big finance can really impact the poor. We actually look at the SDGs, the 17 SDGs by the United Nations and how it affects poverty. So it's an interesting book. It's a book of passion, and everybody, it was written for everybody. It's more or less an anthology, and I hope readers will enjoy it.
Okay. And where would be individuals be able to find your book?
It's on Amazon. It's on the Springer Books, and almost all the leading book sellers. You
just enter your favorite search engine and type in that book title, and it should come up. I found it in Europe, so we know you have an international sales. I was like, euros? Wow, he is all over.
yeah. It's on Amazon, to US Amazon, and Palgrave and others. Yes.
Well, congratulations on that. Congratulations to you and your co-authors as well.
Thank you.
Well, what I want to do right now is I want to kind of encapsulate our talk about yearning, because writing a book, early beginnings in Ghana, surviving the warm weather in Minnesota, to to now being in the New England area. What are, from your perspective, again, just what you can come up with, what are some of your top 3 things that HR personnel, professionals might consider doing now to support their organizations and human capital?
I think 3 things. One would be building critical skills, competencies, and employee experience. The post-pandemic world will see workforce shifts and the need for rapid reskilling. There will be the need for new skills for the distance, what we call the distance economy, remote working. Remote working was on ascendancy before COVID. I mean, we cannot lie to ourselves. It was on ascendancy, and a possible post-pandemic scenario of fully established telecommunicating society necessitates reorientation of how we see and evaluate competencies. COVID-19 has accelerated the levels of digitization to help reduce avoidable physical interactions and resulting in new ways to reinvent work and the way we perform our work. So that is one. The second one, and if I should just add a bit of stat, recent data from Gartner have shown that total number of skills required for a single job is increasing year over year by 10%. And 33% of the skills that were present in an average job posting in 2017 won't be needed in 2021. So that's why we need a dynamic and a strategic flexibility approach to risk rescaling. The second one is organizational design and change management. Work design focus for years on efficiency. That has left many organizations with these rigid structures, workflows, role design, and networks that don't really meet today's needs or flexible with these fast-changing conditions. Because of that, employees suffer the effects in various forms of work friction, including misaligned work design, for example, overwhelmed teams. People are browning out and burning out because of this rigid structure. Trap resources which are sitting in budget and some rigid processes. So we need that strategic, flexible, future forward work design. Mm-hmm. Then the third one I would say is organizational leadership. Of course, I won't leave organizational leadership out. Organizational leadership and the future of work. As I mentioned, COVID-19 pandemic will have a lasting impact on the future of work. The question for HR leaders is how much these trends have and will alter pre-pandemic strategic goals and plans, and what immediate action and long-term adjustment needs to be made. So these are the three key things I see which HR leaders will have to take to bed and wake up with every day. The next normal post-COVID will see more demands on leaders and how leaders take care of themselves and the people and organizations they lead. The pandemic is really challenging the leaders of companies and organizations in every sector around the globe, and its consequences will demand new leadership approaches and present more significant difficulties than anyone anticipates. Unintended consequences, wicked problems of these actions will plague organization leaders. So this is what I see HR leaders will have to grapple with. Ken.
Excellent. My fingers got as fast as they can go. But I like that term about browning out. I haven't heard the browning out part. I heard the burnout. So we see things when they're already like burned and ready to be discarded. But the browning out, whew, that's a concept I need to go look up now.
Yes, it's quite different from burnout. Burnout, you can easily see that somebody is burning out. There are indicators which are markers which are easy. But when somebody is browning, an employee is browning out, you don't see that, and at times they don't even know that they are browning out, and that's the difference.
Yeah, I can tell you in my work with individuals who may be struggling with addiction to alcohol, they may come. We often hear about blackouts, right?
Okay.
And we also talk about brownouts, which is not, you remember certain things, but you're still not fully processing memories. So yeah, we have brownouts in the addiction world, and then blackouts, obviously. But now to know we have browning out in the leadership world and organizations and in the workplace, just something we need to be mindful of.
Yes.
Okay. Well, folks, you have been listening to a broadcast of TBD Thursday with Dr. Ken. I have been here with my guest strategist, as you guys can see, Professor Yawson. We talked about the Y word, yearning.